Thank you for tuning in. It is episode 5 of the Coming Home series featuring community advocate Kimberly Lew. And as always, she's going to have a special guest today. So I'm going to turn it right over to them.
Good afternoon, Hot Springs and Garland County. This is Kimberly Lew, and my special guest today is, Carrie Montgomery, the director of the Hope Movement. I thought that we would start today with a poem. Carrie and I met at the Unity Coalition, and we're just getting to know each other better. But in the spirit of building community, which I think the Coming Home series is about, I thought that in honor of Mr. Elmer Beard's upcoming birthday, that I would read a poem, slide number 2, called The Least We Can Do. The least we can do. I am who I am, and so are you. Courtesy is costless. The opposite is expensive. Respect is deserved. The least we can do is be gentle and kind and be grateful, regardless of values of our experiences. That's the least we can do. And I think that this poem most wholly embraces the spirit with which I think that community and the Hot Springs and Garland County community should be built. And one of the great things of my friendship with Carrie and the Hope Movement is that she does her in an effervescent and completely heartfelt way. So I just really appreciate that you are so embody all of your experience and that you keep on growing and promoting the work that you do.
Thank you.
So on slide 4, we show the logo for Carrie's Hope Movement program. And I guess I just want to ask you, in general, what is the Hope Movement?
Okay, so the Hope Movement is a faith-based organization, and our mission is to help women that are transitioning out of an addictive lifestyle lead a life that's fully led by Jesus. And the way we do that is we've recognized pretty much just the basic human needs, that everybody needs gainful employment, they need a safe living environment, they need life skills. But at the core of the mission of the Hope Movement is we know that every lady that's been in addiction needs Jesus. And so Jesus was my rescue story, and I know that that's who saved me. And so we really try to drive that home with our women. We try to find them as much social capital as we can, positive members of the community, get them plugged into church, and get them volunteering and mentoring and giving back whenever they're at that part of the program.
Okay. So to be completely honest, and you know that we like to do that, is, I have no particular reference to Jesus and religion as the guiding, like my whole approach to homelessness is very pragmatic in terms of, people need a roof over their head, people need skills for navigating life. And yet you come to this from a very radical, well, for me it's radical, but for you, well, maybe for you it was radical.
Well, yeah, at the time it was, yes.
So can you share a little bit of that part of your story as to like how you are so
in love with Jesus?
Yes.
We can just say that, absolutely. Okay, so I do come from a religious background, and I was brought up in church, but I was brought up in religion. I wasn't brought up in relationship. That's the big difference. And so people always ask, what that's about. And religion is a man-made thing. All these different all these different churches. We're meant to be one church. We're meant to operate together. And that's the way that the church was designed. We weren't supposed to be divided. And so Jesus really wants to have a relationship with you. And part of the Godhead is the Holy Spirit who comes to reside in you. He's your helper. He's your comforter. And so as a child, I was in church all the time. Every time the doors were open, my grandmother was the music minister for 13 years in the church that I was raised in. And because of my life experience and the way my family looked, and don't get me wrong, I honor my family. They're amazing people. Things had happened in my life where when I went to church and I was learning about how a family model was supposed to be, well, when I went home, it didn't look like that for me. And so church wasn't, it was almost like I was made to go. Does that make sense? And so when I got old enough not to go to church, I rebelled. But I had,
Yeah, I had that same.
right.
I was taken to Episcopal church, and it just did not resonate with me unless, I ended up being a little more confused as to
Right.
what churches had to offer.
Right. And so when I was little, my mom and dad ended up having a divorce when I was a year old. And it's because my dad was an addict. He was on drugs. And it got to be a really dangerous situation. And so my mother did the best thing for her child and left him. And my family didn't have any experience, especially my mom with drugs and what they do to you and that kind of lifestyle. She was very naive. And so she didn't realize that was going on until it was too late. She was already married. They already had a child. And so by the time I was 5 years old, my father was lost so far into addiction, and there weren't the resources like there are today to help addicts. And he committed suicide because he couldn't get off drugs. And it was explained to me at a very young age that was why he committed suicide, was because he wanted more than anything to be my father, but he couldn't get off drugs. And so he took his own life. And that's a really hard pill for a child to swallow. Because children need their dads, and that's what we're seeing a lot right now.
So then, did you feel as if your existence killed him in some sense?
Well, I don't know that if it was really my existence. I didn't take ownership of it like that, but that did fuel my addiction later on in life. Was if drugs were so good that my father desperately wanted to be my father but couldn't quit doing them, I needed to know what was so good about them. And that was the excuse that I used to be a drug addict for many, many years.
Oh, so your sense is that you started drugs because you wanted to understand your father's experience and what had happened to him in your life?
Well, and so, in recovery, you learn that we've made our own choices. And so, yes, I made my choice to do drugs and to be a drug addict. But I used that as an excuse because that was a hurt that I was trying to cover up. That was a hole in my heart that I was trying to fill with all the wrong things.
Okay.
And so that wasn't the only trauma I had when I was little. I was also, I had some sexual abuse from a stepfather. My mom and I were also both physically abused by another stepfather because my mom had her own insecurities. She was kind of scared to be alone for a little while there. And so she was looking for comfort in other places as well, and as a younger adult or middle-aged woman. And so she didn't know that these things were going on. And especially with the sexual abuse, I was such a small child when it started, and it happened for several years, but I didn't know how to verbalize that. I didn't know how to tell anybody. And so it actually started coming out in all kind of different ways. Like I was acting out in school in third grade. I started stealing things that didn't belong to me. And that's the way, that was my way to try to get somebody's attention, I guess. I can look back on that now and think, well, I had no reason to take anything. I wasn't raised that way, and that was how I was dealing with the trauma as a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old little girl,
Right, like the wholeness of your experience wasn't being seen, and so you thought if you did something so that people would see you,
right,
then maybe
right,
you could be released from your secret.
I guess, I don't know, but I can look back on it now and know that that's why I was doing those things. And so I ended up hanging out with the wrong crowds in high school. I started dating the wrong guys because I was already around the wrong crowd and had gotten into some trouble. And so my junior year, I actually left school. And then I started dating a guy that was pretty much a lifetime drug user. He had grown up in a house where his dad was a meth cook. And he used to go to school smelling like a meth lab. He explained things to me in detail. And so he knew all about drugs. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, this guy's so cool.
Right. I mean, in terms of an education, it's like, well, I don't know anything about cooking drugs. I probably would find that pretty interesting too. If someone explained to me how to do it. Like, oh, new skill.
Yeah, so I was already smoking pot because I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. And so, that was something I started doing in school before I quit. Well, this guy was in the party scene. He was in the rave scene. They were going having fun and eating all these hallucinogenic drugs and dancing, and there was lights and music, and I just thought he was it, and those drugs opened the doors for everything. And so he and I were together for about 3.5 years. And after that 3.5 years was over, I had a massive crack in opiate addiction, because once I started trying the drugs, it was like, oh, wow, this one's so fun. Let's try another one. Let's see what this one is like. And soon it started opening the doors to the ones that actually caused a physical addiction, or when you didn't have them, you hurt, you couldn't function without them, especially like opiates. And so
when you're falling down that path, I mean, are you aware of that you're becoming addicted actually, or for you, I mean, or was it just more fun?
It was just more fun to me at first. And I think most addicts will tell you this, that it starts out as fun, especially when you're doing the psychedelic type stuff that makes you see pretty things and laugh all night long, But then when you start doing opiates and cocaine and things like that, nobody really tells you that they're physically addictive. I mean, that's not really a topic of conversation that comes up, at the point of, are you sure you want to do this? Because, after doing it for about a year or so, you're going to be sick as a dog when you don't have them. Nobody tells you that, And so it's an all in the moment thing. We're just getting high and we think we're having fun.
So when you think that you're having fun, I mean, because momentarily it feels good.
Yes.
And because it's addiction, there's no long-term planning. Is that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I believe that people that are very early in their addictions too, they're still what we call a functional addict. They can do drugs and they can still go to work, or they can do something just on the weekends and not throughout the week. And then there are people that can do them and just never do them again. My husband is one. He's admitted to me that he dabbled around in his past and he never had an addiction to anything. He could just do it one day and then never do it again if he didn't want to. Where you've got people like me, where I can't do just one. Like I want it all, and 1 to 10, 100 is not enough. We'll do it until we're homeless, living in a box, and we've sold everything we had. And so there's just a difference. I don't know if it's a gene. I don't know if it's a chemical in the brain. They're still trying to understand really what addiction is. Some people call it a habit. Some people call it a disease. And so it's more understood than it was like in my father's time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just funny to me how some people can get addicted and some can't. I don't understand that yet. So I'm learning.
So you have women in your program who then probably have addictions on different levels and experience it differently. Are there methodologies that the women who go through your program generally use to try to figure out where on the spectrum of addiction they are and how to get out of it?
Well, I would have to say that all the ladies that come into my program are on the far end of the spectrum, because by the time they need the hope movement, it's because they don't have anything left. They've kind of got that addictive part of them, like me, where we're going to get high and we don't care if we've got anything to eat today. We're going to get high. We don't care if we've got gas in the car or if it's legal to drive. We're going to get high today, and we don't care who has our kids or who's watching them, or even that we don't have them at all. So by the time they need the services of what my organization gives, they're pretty far gone. And when they come to us, they've already completed a rehab program, and then they've recognized that they still need more, and so they transition to the hope movement.
So what's in a rehab program, or most of the ones available here?
So most of the rehab programs here we've got a couple that are just kind of like a lockdown type one, to where you go in and they don't get to leave, they don't get to work, they don't, so they're just doing groups all day long, and they're learning about themselves, learning about their addictions, and whatever the curriculum teaches in those other organizations. Where when they come to us at the Hope Movement, we're kind of getting them ready to get back into the real world, trying to get them ready to be reunited with their kids. So they've got a lot more freedoms when they come to the Hope Movement, and we try to kind of stair step them into being independent and responsibility as they start phasing up and showing progress with the program, because they're allowed to go on passes, and they're allowed to have their own cars. They're allowed to go out and get a job, so they're out in the public. And so there's a lot of trust that comes along with being in the Hope Movement, because we want them to be independent women when they leave. We don't want them to be codependent on their family. We don't want them to be codependent on a man. We want to show them that they can do it on their own, and if there is a codependency, then it needs to be on God.
So in the classic kind of federal HUD mandated approach to homelessness, the first priority is always shelter of some kind.
Right.
Do you agree that that's what people need first in your experience?
I believe so. Yeah. A safe living environment. Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of hard to go out and apply for jobs if you haven't had a shower in a week, or if you don't have somewhere to wash your clothes, or if you don't have anywhere to cook your food. I think that the safe living environment is absolutely one of the first things.
Then is it also important to recover from addiction?
Of a safe living environment? Absolutely. So I'll tell you a little bit more of my story. Okay. So, getting back to the radical part and what I needed whenever I came out of my addiction. So I had messed around for about 15 years on drugs, and just thought I'd ruined myself and ruined my life, and did horrible, terrible things to everybody that knew me. I'd borrowed money, and I'd stolen things, and I'd ran my family through the mud more than once. And literally every bridge that I had lit the match myself and burnt. And so I ended up with a whole bunch of criminal charges. And in 2016, I was in the Garland County Detention Center with felony charges in both divisions of court. I had charges in district court as well, and multiple failure to appears in every courtroom that I had charges on. And so I landed in the detention center, and I was not going anywhere. And the bonds people actually came and pulled me out of the house where I was at, which was with a guy that was on dope. He was my tweaker boyfriend, and in this nasty, nasty house that needs to be knocked down, probably condemned. And that was where I exited the detention center too. Thank you, Jesus, that I had an encounter with him and with the Holy Spirit, and he had opportunities waiting for me. But I didn't have anywhere else to go, because nobody wanted me around, because nobody could trust me. And so I had to go back into that ugly living environment that was not safe. At any moment, I could have relapsed just being around it, because that was my personality. That was the lifestyle that I had lived. But I had such a radical experience in the detention center with the Lord. I was delivered in a second from my addiction. And so when I walked out of the detention center, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a car. I didn't have money. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have my kid. I didn't have anything from what the world could see, but I had hope. And I had 2 handfuls of mentors of people that had been coming into the Garland County Detention Center teaching programs. And so when I walked out of the jail and went back to that house, prayed up, ready to face what I was going to, and I had a job in a day, and it only took about a week before the man that was employing me recognized the situation that I was in. And him and his wife, they came to me and they said, look, we have a 3-bedroom home, and it's only us. And we want you to come stay in one of our rooms, and you don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay for food. We want to do this for you so you can save money to get your own place. Yes.
Now
that was where it turned around. Yeah.
Ah. See, and that's interesting because those, that's an individual couple who recognized your need and had the heart to offer you help.
Yeah.
I find one of the frustrations in trying to organize people to have programs that there's a lot of, you have to get the people together, and then you have to get the money together, and then you have to get the house together, and then you have to. But the help that you got was more immediate from just two people making a choice that you were a person who was worthwhile,
Right.
and they were going to trust you.
Right. And the funny thing is too, is so I'm a master painter, house painter, cabinet finisher. And my boss, at that time, he owned a cabinet shop on 3rd Street, and it was called Imagine That Custom Cabinets. And he hired me as his finisher. And so, for one, he was my employer and he needed me to come to work. But then at the same time, he recognized that if he needed me to stay 14, 16 hours in a day, like I wasn't complaining because I didn't want to go home. I wanted to stay at work and work, and then when he met the boyfriend a few times, he was like, he really got it. And plus he knew my background. He had actually called one of my old employers and he's like, look, bro, hire her if you want to, but I'm not going to say I didn't warn you. But God laid me on his heart, and he's like, well, you know what? I respect your opinion about her, but I'm going to give her a shot. And I'm so thankful that he did.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So let's look at slide number 5 just for the fun of it, because I think you can speak to this also. It's about the idea of interdependence. And interdependence is defined in some regards as the relationship between two or more living things where each one benefits from the other.
That's good.
And then on slide 6, I posted kind of the interdependence that you actually kind of embody, because you had told me about the work of the Garage Church and the Cooperative Christian Ministries and Clinic and the Lake Point Celebrate Recovery Program.
Yes. So something that we recognize at the Hope Movement, and again, this reflects in my recovery story, is it really took a village for me to get clean and stay clean. I had to rely on anybody and everybody that would give me a shot. Because again, like I said, everybody that knew me before, friends, family, I had burned all my bridges. And so I really had to rely heavily on my mentors and going to classes and meeting other people, and especially people that had a heart for people like me. And so what we do at the Hope Movement is the ladies take a lot of life skills classes, which is where Garage Church and CCMC come in. So Garage Church is one of our biggest, I guess I wouldn't know if you would call them supporters, but more like partners. So our ladies take anger management classes. I've got one that's taken their domestic violence class right now. The Getting Ahead initiative, which actually is CCMC facilitates in Garland County. Pastor Mike from Garage Church teaches our ladies Getting Ahead. And now there are other churches too, but for the most part, they mostly go to the one at Garage Church. They do go to one at New Life Church, and they also go to one at First Baptist. But they're some of our biggest partners. And there's several other life skills classes that Garage Church offers as well. And our ladies are always more than welcome to take any of them after they're done with the prerequisites and the curriculum of the Hope Movement.
So when we talk about life skills, I mean, because we say very generally life skills, but in your experience, can you identify the life skills that you lacked particularly? And how finding out that you lacked a skill changed how you were able to navigate?
Absolutely. So when I was in my addiction, for a while I was a functional addict, but I worked for family, and so I was a drug addict. I showed up for work late all the time. I was good at my job, so even when I wasn't working for family, because I was good at my job, my employer just kind of went with it, and that they kind of enabled me. So I never really learned the importance of employer-employee relations. which is the same with my ladies too. We're teaching them that. I didn't learn how to budget because I didn't know how to save money. I'd never had a savings account. I had a bank account one time, which I overdrew and never paid. And I think it actually came out of my tax money one year, so budgeting and saving money and the bank account, that was kind of beyond me. I had never had direct deposit. So when I got clean, that was something new and amazing. I didn't have to go take a paper check to the bank and turn it in. Like, it was just there.
That's the whole interesting thing. Yeah. If you've had a bank account, then not having one seems mysterious. And if you've never had a bank account, then the whole institution is a mystery.
That's right. And then also too, I knew that I was supposed to have insurance and registration and current tags on my vehicle, but that's something that escapes everybody in addiction. I've had women come through the Hope Movement that haven't had driver's licenses in 20 or 40 years, been driving on suspended license. And so that's another thing that we help them do, is to get all that legal. And then also too, just recognizing what your triggers are. What takes you back to that addictive lifestyle in your mind? What makes you think about it? And, knowing where your hurts and your habits came from, what started your drug addiction. So we teach them to kind of recognize those things. And then the anger management class, addicts are very angry. They're angry about things that happened in their past, the things that people have done to them and the way they were treated. We have some women come in that have some pretty big trauma in their life, that makes the traumas that I went through look like nothing almost.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
So one of the things, the interesting thing that you had said to me about trauma was that you pretty much estimated that every single human has trauma. And so what's the approach, as a community, for us to understand other people, like give them slack or support for what they may be going through that we may not understand or know?
Right. So, my view of things is that none of us have made it through life unscathed. And I'm going to say most of us probably didn't make it through our childhood unscathed in some way. We've all had things happen. We've all had things that hurt us. And, whether it be, deaths in your family, or whether it's abuse, anything. And so some people handle trauma differently. And I think the way to handle it with other human beings is just to find out what you have a passion for, and learn how to get involved in some kind of organization like that. And if there's not one, speak up and start one, because there's so many needs in our community. I get phone calls all the time for resources for things, and sometimes there's just not any. And especially if you have experience with a certain trauma or a certain hurt, or a certain thing, for me, that's why they asked me or agreed to let me be the director of the Hope Movement, because I have experience and I can speak life to the drug addict. I can speak life to the child that has the child or adult that's had a parent that's committed suicide or is having suicidal thoughts, or to women that have been sexually abused. I've got experience with that, and because I'm a survivor of those traumas and I've healed from those things, I believe the Lord has given me an assignment to speak to those things and to speak to those type of people. And so if your passion is for the homeless, get plugged in, or if it's for drug addicts, get plugged in somewhere. Jail ministry too, which we're not allowed to do right now, because COVID, but start writing letters or collecting items. I think the most basic human need is love. We all need love, and we all need to be 14. Yeah. And we all need to be recognized, and everybody wants to be heard and understood. And sometimes it just takes it just takes a special individual or a certain individual to recognize those things in people. And if you've ever been in those kind of situations, then you have the eyes to see them.
So I always really think that with any experience, I grow from giving back or from using my experience to help others as a satisfying way of continuing forward.
Yes.
It seems like you agree with that too.
I absolutely agree with that. It's doing what I do, especially, is very satisfying. And I tell my ladies all the time, I think I learn just as much or more from you as you learn from me. And it's, we've come to that interdependence with each other. I've got life experiences and I'm just a little bit further along than they are. I'm just like them. I'm just like them. I'm just 6 years into my journey. And so I always like to tell them, that everybody in life that's ever mastered anything started as an apprentice. And so it's so gratifying to be in the position where I'm at, because I'm only 6 years in, so I'm still learning. And I've got a lot of people and mentors that are still speaking into my life and still teaching me leadership, because I'm definitely not perfect. I'm striving to be that way one day, but we all know we'll never get to perfection. But it's just cool to be in the middle, where I've got these ladies that are learning from me, but then I've also got mentors that are still pouring into me and loving on me, and I'm still learning from them.
So it's nice to be interconnected. You had said very early on when we were having conversations about social capital and how you didn't understand what that was at some point, but it seems that, okay, let's see. So in the getting ahead, I think that's slide number 8, is I'm assuming that this is the book that you worked from, perhaps. But then, was that the?
That's
Okay.
That's what our Hope Movement ladies take, yeah.
Okay, and then in it had said something about mental models, and that you had discovered hidden rules of economic class that you didn't understand. So slide 12, if you can find that one. Oh, I can barely read that. So in it,
okay, yeah.
It says the hidden rules of economic class, and then it says for each subcategory, or do you want to explain between poverty, middle class, and wealth, and
Sure.
some of these ideas?
Absolutely. So when we talk about hidden rules of the economic class, that this was something that was a game changer for me when I was learning. Now, in the Garland County Detention Center is when I actually took Getting Ahead, but it was called Getting Ahead While Getting Out, which is still same model as in the Just Getting By world, except it's for incarcerated people instead of people that are in the community. But you can see the difference on that slide, where so possessions, for example, people that are in poverty value people more than anything. They value their friends, they value their family. Where people in the middle class, they're collectors of things. They like things, and so, and you can look in my house, I'm middle class, I've got knickknacks everywhere, and so in fact, I need to go through some and have a yard sale or put them in storage or give them away. So I'm the perfect example of that middle class collector of things. But then you've got the wealthy people where, their idea of possessions is going after one of a kind objects and, things that are really high value stuff, artwork and things like that. And then something that I really liked too is the food aspect of it. That really spoke volumes to me, learning about it. And so when you're thinking about a poverty person with food, a key question that you would ask would be, did you have enough? And to them, the quantity is more important than anything. Do we have enough food? Am I
hungry or am I
am
not
I hungry? Am I getting satisfied? Does my family have enough? Those type of things. And then when you get into the middle class, the key question is, did you like it? So the quality of the food was important. Did it taste good? Was it not so much quantity, because we've got the quantity. So now it's
Okay.
Yeah,
the
was it
quality.
cooked right? Was my steak medium instead of medium rare? And so then when you get up into the wealthy class, a key question, that they would say was, was it presented well? They're more worried about how their food looks, and the presentation
The style
is more
points.
important than the quantity or even how it tastes. And so there's a huge difference between the economic classes.
So then, number 13, if you can, Paul. So I had seen this about mental models, and part of how that mental modeling kind of came to mind was that we have internal pictures in our mind about how the world works,
Yes.
but then we're not necessarily aware of it. And then it was saying that, or we have an idea about something, but we never really examined why we believe it. Or we act from it, but we don't know where it came from.
Right.
And then because it's stuck in our head somehow, we can't learn, or we don't know how to behave from there.
Right.
So when you're coming out of addiction, is that really the whole challenge, is just shifting your mindset around everything? Or
I think it depends on how you became an addict. What because obviously as an addict, most people are going to end up in poverty. And so my experience with poverty was situational poverty. I chose to become an addict, and so I put myself in poverty. And so I did have an awareness of how the world worked, and an internal picture. That was part of my upbringing and part of my family, how my family raised me. But then I also got to experience another world in poverty and homelessness, being a drug addict. And so I knew how my life was supposed to look. Didn't necessarily have all the life skills that I needed because I started doing drugs at such an early age. But people that would say, I've had ladies come to the Hope Movement that addiction has been a generational thing for them, and so their poverty has been generational, and so they have no idea how a middle class family functions, or even how to obtain, coming up out of poverty to be a middle class citizen, or even a contributing citizen at all.
So I've also heard that a lot of that, if your mental model is stuck in one place, that it's hard to adopt a different level outside of, I guess, in this case, poverty, but maybe an addiction or
anything
addictive behavior, right?
Yeah. I guess that just comes to, do you want to be teachable or not?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take the time to change your view of the world and the community and of people? Do you even have a passion to have a different point of view on things? Do you care at all? And I think people that do, they find that place in their spirit where they remain teachable, and then they go after things. If I'm going to say, that God gives people a heart for the community and for members of our community and even of the world that are suffering and hurting and need a hand up. And so yeah, there's, like I said, you just got to remain teachable. That you don't be closed-minded. Because you just never know where somebody came from, or what's happened to them. Again, we're back to that, traumas and things like that. You don't know what's happened to a person to make them the way they are. And you see it in behaviors all the time of people that are in recovery. Also, they react a certain way to things, not always a way that a regular person would react. And so you really got to learn how to respond and figure out what the wound is behind that behavior, what's driving that.
So then here's a question that's just, I guess, personal to me, perhaps. You have experience with drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I do not, but I'm curious about it. But kind of in the same way that, like, my partner is a military vet, and I've had a lot of vets tell me that, you really just can't talk to a vet like a vet because the experience is so unique.
Yeah.
That it's just hard to relate, and then people won't open up to me because I really just don't know. And now, do you feel like that's the same with addiction, or is it really more of just a love and openness kind of a?
Oh, it's not always a love and openness. There's so much distrust in some families. I hate to say it, but sometimes the parent-child relationship is what drove the child to eventually become an addict. I've got a lady that her mom was very critical of her when she was a little girl, and so in my line of work, and especially in my position at the Hope Movement, sometimes I have to be the authoritarian, and not in a mean way, out of love, obviously. And so, I've had to learn correction, and it has to show a lot of love behind it. But they don't always take that correction well, or they're not always open to it, or they're not always open to conversation about things, and they hold stuff in because they don't feel like they're going to be heard, or anything's going to change if they say anything. And so it's almost like a brick wall. It's a defense. It's a mask that they put on. Oh, I'm fine. No, you're not fine. We need to talk about this. But sometimes they don't even know how to communicate. And so there's another life skill. Communication is a big one that they learn while they're with us, and I've had to learn it as well.
And does that just take repeated practice? I mean,
Yes.
Because that's a trust thing.
That's a trust thing. Absolutely.
And so you just both have to be willing to come back again and again and trip up and then go back to your corner and then come back in and go, let's try it again.
Yeah. Well, you have to know when to stop it. If it's not going the right way, or how to course correct, you really got to gauge that if we're getting off track here, or if we just need to stop altogether, which normally we don't ever need to stop. But yeah, there's big trust that comes in with telling people, because when you're having a hard time with things, or things have been done to you, or just when you're having a hard time, people don't like to be vulnerable. We're that's really kind of a society thing. We're such an individualist culture. We come up by ourselves, we're after self-promotion, so we're taught that not to be vulnerable, that's we're strong, independent people, that's how you move up in the world. And so to get down and be vulnerable and open and realistic and emotional with people, it's really hard to do, especially if you've had a hard life.
So it seems like then we've taken this independence thing too far. And because it does feel as if people are afraid to ask for help because it makes them look or feel vulnerable. And then you have to throw up more defenses so that you won't be taken advantage of. How do you view navigating through that?
How do I view navigating through that? Okay, so getting people to ask for help. Well, that's like step one of every 12-step program, is admitting that we need help, that we've messed ourselves, our life, or whatever up, and that we need help.
Okay, all right.
And so, it is hard to navigate that. It's hard to kind of answer that question, because most of the ones that I get are already to that point where they know they need help and their life is unmanageable without some help. That they've tried to do it on their own for too long, and they know that they need a leg up, a hand up, just somebody to love them. So I really can't answer that question about how to get people to break that independence off, because that's just a part of American culture.
Well, yeah, I've also heard that in addiction, hitting bottom, whatever that is the beginning of it. And I always worry for people, how far is bottom? Or there is always a sense when I talk to people that they're clinging because they don't want to hit bottom. And then I've heard from recovering addicts that it's really only hitting bottom that got them to change course.
Right.
But then there's that perception of what is bottom, and am I going to die on the way there?
Right. Well, the sad reality to that is some people's bottom is death. Absolutely. And they never, not that they never had the chance to ask for help, they just never did. You know, and sometimes people will ask for help and they'll go back out there, and it seems like every time an addict relapses, it doesn't just take you right back to where you left off, but it seems like it gets worse and worse and worse every time, because now, you know, that humility and that remorse of, oh wow, you know, I got clean, and man, here I right back, I just did it again, I'm ruining my life, you know, and so that is the scary thing about recovery, is that some people will die, some people just won't get it. Sometimes all you get to do is just plant the seeds, and then you don't ever get to see them grow. You know, maybe they'll grow eventually years down the road, which, like, that was in my case. In 2009, I was in rehab for 9 months, and everybody thought I had it. Well, I didn't. In a week, I relapsed, and it took me all the way from 2009 to 2016 to actually get clean and for it to stick.
So in reflecting on relapsing, can you share like how that happens in
Yes.
any kind of way?
Yes. Okay. So, you know, they say you've got to change your people, places, and things, and that's not a cliche. That is absolutely the most important thing, because every time I got around the wrong people, I relapsed. So for 15 years, I relapsed and recovered and relapsed and recovered until finally it was like, okay, enough. You know, I didn't log into Facebook. I deleted every contact in my phone except for family. It was just, when you get around the people, they're in the places that you don't need to be, and they're doing things that you don't need to be doing. You know, and if you're not strong in your recovery, which most new recovered people are not,
Right.
it's
Because that was
it's a
your social
reality. That was
circle.
that was your social capital. Your all your social capital was drug addicts. And so that's another thing about getting clean too. It's really lonely at first, because which is why I love the sisterhood of the Hope Movement. You know, they have like a little family unit going on in there. And for me, you know, leaving the detention center clean and not going into a program was different. I worked very hard. I had 3 different jobs until I had my little boy back. I went to church on Wednesday night, Sunday day, Sunday night. I wasn't so much isolating because I was socializing at that time. But when I was at home, I just needed to be me, because I had been a drug addict for 15 years. I didn't even know what I liked to watch on TV. You know, I didn't know who Carrie was, because Carrie had identified as an addict her entire life so far. Her all the way through teenage, all the way up to young adult. I mean, I was 30 years old when I got clean already. So I had never been clean my whole adult life. I didn't know what I liked to do. I didn't know who I liked to be around. And so I needed that time to myself to figure out who I was.
So I didn't make these slides right. So I made slide 17 about self-respect, but then I made slide 15 about self-love and community. So it seems like all 3 of those things seem to be working in the becoming whole again aspect of recovery addiction.
Yes.
So what do you have to say about that?
So self-love is absolutely important. You've got to care about yourself enough to get clean. You know, again, I'm just going to speak from my experience because it's my story, so I know it to be true. Like my little boy, you know, to get my little boy back when I got clean, it wasn't that I didn't love him. I couldn't get off drugs. But I had to learn to love myself, and I had to work on myself and get myself better before I could ever think about being a mom. But thankfully that he was with my family, so I was able to do that, you know, because I knew that he was okay, he was taken care of, he wasn't wanting for nothing. And so that gave me time to learn to love myself and to learn who I was and to get better. And then also too, to get things set up to where it was an easy transition for him to come home to be with me. You know, the Lord blessed me with him. And so obviously he expected me to be his mom, you know, so I knew that if I let him go for a little bit, enough to figure out who I was and to get better, that the Lord would bless him. back to me again. But then also too, it took a village for me to get clean. It took a lot of community members, love and support and advocacy for me to get clean. Some of my very first mentors and some of my very good friends now are in the Garland County Sheriff's Department. I cannot tell you how many lectures I got when I was in jail, and they would tell me, girl, you are too smart to be here. Why are you in this life? What are you doing? Encouragement after encouragement after encouragement. They are amazing people. Amazing. And that's like Captain Belinda Cosgrove out at the detention center. She was the very first one to push me into giving back after I got clean. The first one to get me to go out and tell my story and to testify and let people know, what had happened to me and where I came from. And so not only was it the police from the community that wanted me to get better, and they don't want to bring you to jail. They're just doing their job.
Well, that's the interesting
They're
thing
just regular people.
about the perception of law enforcement and jail is the difference between, punishment and support.
Right.
And I guess depending on where you are on the spectrum of lawlessness.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I had been in and out of jail for over 15 years, and every time it was longer and longer and longer, and the charges kept getting worse and worse and worse. But they saw something in me when I didn't see it in myself.
So did you find
and they
it
made sure
weird?
to tell me about it.
Did you find it weird that they were trying to encourage you and you didn't really value yourself in that way?
I did kind of think it was weird at first. And then all the people that were coming in doing the programs too, though, I thought it was weird that people were coming in the detention center to see us because we were criminals, we were addicts, we were worthless, our life was ruined. Everybody was done with us. So why are these people taking time out of their day to come in here and love on us? Like, what is wrong with them?
That's amazing. So then did you distrust them because they were
No,
spending their time with you?
I didn't distrust them. I went in there and I quickly found out why they were there. And it was because the Lord had put them on a mission. He'd given them an assignment. And even the ones that weren't in there doing Bible studies, that were just doing life skills classes, or even just the GED classes, or the, I can't remember what the other one is. They do skill certifications in the detention center too. But I mean, they just wanted to come in and help. They recognized that that was their biggest captive audience that had needs in the community. They could come in there and love on us, and we could do nothing about it.
You can't run away now.
Well, now, but we had to make the choice to go to class, and they would bring candy, so of course we were going. But then we got a whole lot more than just candy. The programs and the people that came in the jail, and like I said, even the employees of the detention center, they helped change my life.
So when you say it takes a village, you are not kidding in any sense of the word.
No. I've got more mentors than I can count. And some of them aren't even mentors anymore. They're family. They're extended family.
That's nice. So we're getting close to the end of our hour, and I was wondering, being that you're so involved in this work on so many levels, and the challenges are great, but do you have any kind of vision or wish or thing that you want to share with our community to encourage each of us to be more generous with our time to help others in our community and recognize that everyone needs to be lifted a little bit?
Yes. Probably one of the biggest things, and I've even had to train myself to do this too, is when you see a person in need, like I'm going to say this, and I'll honor my husband and I love him, but he'll see a young man on the side of the road holding a sign. Oh, well, that guy could go to work. And I'm like, wait, you don't know what's going on with that guy. Again, he may not have anywhere to live, to take a shower, or any way to apply for a job, or this or that, or there may be some mental illness going on there. So just take the time to understand, or try to understand what people are going through. Again, we've all had certain things happen to us in life that some people just haven't healed from, probably because they don't know how. And so just make people your mission. You just never know, where sometimes just saying hello to somebody in Walmart, or smiling at them, or even just saying hello. Some of the most basic things can lift somebody's day and just change everything. And so don't look down on people that need something, and think, well, they've got it together. Why can't they do it themselves? No, most of the time they don't, or they would have done it themselves.
That's true too. It's interesting how ingrained a certain level of judgment, which is a mental model, I guess, that keeps us separate.
Yeah.
Whereas really the whole connection thing, which, the library is all about connection. And the ways that we can find that we're more comfortable to connect with people.
Right.
Is I guess a skill that we all need to learn.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Anything else you might want to say or share? Or?
I don't think so. I think we kind of got it out there. I just, well, I will say something. One more thing. This homelessness and poverty, addiction, all these kinds of problems that people have. This is not just a problem for one organization or another.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the church's problem, or that church's problem. It's not the library's problem. It's not CCMC's problem. It's not whoever's problem, Hope Movement's problem. This is a community problem. And so, it reflects in the people that support the Hope Movement, because we run on donations. And we have several different churches and individuals and organizations that give to the Hope Movement. Without them, without the community coming together, there would be no Hope Movement. And so, again, I just really feel like you just need to ask the Lord, what He would have you do in your community. Whose life can you speak into because of your experience, or even without experience? Because there was plenty of ladies that would come into the detention center and teach us that had no experience with addiction or criminal history at all, and just love on people. These are your community members. We all live in this city together, and we've all got to do this together. And I guess that's where the unity thing comes in, So we got to quit doing that. We got to quit placing the blame on, oh, these people have it, these people can get it, or this is their job. No, it's all of our job, to love on people.
Yeah. And I think that I would really like our community to remember that love is the thing in our hearts, and that I am more happy when I am loving on anybody, on
Yes.
somebody. And so it doesn't feel like a labor, and it makes me feel less isolated if I can connect to somebody lovingly, no matter what. And it just seems that the time is very ripe for us to shift from othering people,
right, and
just loving them, because it feels really good.
That's right. That's right.
So, okay, this is Coming Home, and in our home, we promote love.
That's right. Go out there and love people.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate you having me.